Brian bring to AC/DC that's different from Bon Scott?
Well, I think that his sense of humor was different. You know, they both have a great sense of humor, but I think that, you know, Bon came from, you know, almost like a Keith Moon, you know, kind of wild sense of humor, kind of a prankster sense of humor, where maybe Brian's sense of humor was a little bit more serious, if that makes sense. You know, like, you know, kind of more meat and potatoes. You know, maybe more relatable to the average man.
Mm. Do you remember the first time that you heard Back in Black, or the Back in Black record?
I do. I was at my girlfriend's house. I guess it was 1980 or 81, right?
It was 80, yeah.
Yeah, so I was at Jennifer McGill's house, and I had bought, what records did I get that day? I think I got like the Pretenders' first record, and Back in Black, and Pat Benatar's first record. Those are the three records I got that day. And I hadn't heard Back in Black or Hell's Bells or anything on the radio. I just knew that the record was coming out, so I got it. And I just remember, you know, it was the last record of the three that I listened to, you know, because I had already heard, you know, Hit Me With Your Best Shot by Pat Benatar. I wanted to hear that. I had already heard Tattooed Love Boys by the Pretenders on the radio, you know. I was like, so I wanted to hear those records first. And they were great. But then I put on Back in Black, you know, and immediately I knew that this is something else. You know, this is, you know, so focused. And by the time it gets to Hell's Bells, you know, you're just like, wow, where am I? You know, what? Because I was, you know, how old was I? I was 14, you know, perfect age, you know, just like, oh my God. But as much as that record really had an impact on me, immediately, it wasn't something I listened to all the time after that. Because, you know, right around that time, I was still listening to like live records, you know, like UFO, Strangers in the Night, Ted Nugent, Double Live Gonzo, Zeppelin, Sabbath, stuff like that. And AC/DC, despite having this amazing record out, it didn't captivate me yet. You know what I mean? It was mind blowing, but I was like, yeah, you know, I want to hear Tony Iommi. You know what I mean? So it was just, from a guitar player's point of view, I just wasn't really ready to live in that record at the time. But it was so obviously, you know, a concrete breaking music, you know, masterpiece.
What do you think that you know, those first two records that Brian's on with Back in Black and For Those About to Rock are kind of widely considered the pinnacle of his career, really? I mean, he comes out of the gate with probably the best record he's ever done. I mean, but what do you think Mutt Lang got out of Brian that maybe we haven't really seen since?
Well, I mean, you know, Mutt Lang, he's like a mad professor. You know, it's the way that he approached, you know, I mean, I look at AC/DC, but I also look at early Def Leppard, you know, because he produced the early stuff too. And I think if you take all the different productions that Mutt Lang did with rock music, you know, he definitely always was like on the cutting edge, paying attention to like popular music as well. So, you know, you take a band like AC/DC, especially with Brian coming in, you know, after AC/DC already, you know, had a huge impact on the music scene. And what I think Mutt Lang did, and I think he does with everybody he works with, is he perfects the song. You know, he might add a twist here and there, but what he does is I hate to use the word simplify because it's not simplify, but he gets to the fucking point. You know what I mean? He gets to the point. And, you know, I don't know Brian as an artist per se. I've never worked with Brian, so I don't know what he brought in to rehearsal when they were writing and what the songs were like before Mutt got a hold of them. I don't know if Mutt was there from day one when they started writing. I don't know. but I know that Mutt Lang just has a knack for taking any piece of music and turning it into, you know, a potential hit song. And that's what Back in Black has. It has all these hit songs, you know, bam, 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 bam. And it's kind of like the Rick Rubin syndrome. You know, Rick Rubin walk into a studio with anybody and, you know, firsthand knowledge, Rick only works with bands that are great. He only works with songwriters that are great. You know what I mean? And that propels him as a producer to being considered a great producer. And there's a lot to be said for that, you know. But, you know, from my experience with producers and with outside writers and things like that, you never know where the magic comes from. You know, it's always a chemistry between people. Sometimes it's a chemistry between people and certain microphones. You know, it's this alchemy that you can't put your finger on. But, you know, kind of like something that Angus actually said once is that, you know, when he's listening to a mix, if he immediately like starts moving his head and his body starts moving, he feels like it's a hit. And that's, you know, you should probably stop at that point, you know, to go, okay, it's there. Okay, next song, you know what I mean? I think Mutt Lang probably has a lot to do with that. You know, he has a really good gauge for what, you know, how humans respond to music. You know, because so many times you'll be in a strip bar or a bar or somewhere and a song comes on that you never heard before. You're not thinking about it, but you're moving to it. And that's kind of unexplainable. You know, sometimes you can't explain what it is. You know, it's like, why do I love Jimi Hendrix so much? And I understand Stevie Ray Vaughan, but Stevie Ray Vaughan doesn't give me that same feeling that Jimi Hendrix does. Who knows? I don't know.
Yeah, you guys opened for AC/DC on. Was it two different tours? Were you on Blow Up Your Video and Razor's Edge?
Yeah, it was. What was the first one? I don't know.
It was
Fly on the Wall, Blow Up Your Video.
Blow Up Your Video. Yeah.
Blow Up Your Video.
Yeah, I mean, what were those experiences like? I mean, how did you come to get those you know, on those tours? Was it like a label kind of thing? Were you guys on? Were we both on the same label at the time?
No, we were on Vertigo, which was like a sub label of Polydor. Like, you know, they had Mercury and Vertigo and we got the tour because Malcolm liked our first album. That's how we got the first tour. You know, we'd come out. I was surprised that year. Mick Jagger had our first record in his collection. I found out through a groupie friend. You know? So at that age, you know, it's mind blowing when you know that people that you admire are listening to your current album. It's like, wow, okay. So I remember that. How did it go down? We started out in clubs. And all of a sudden, like 2 weeks in, our manager called us and said, "Hey, you guys want to open for AC/DC?" We're like, "Well, yeah." Okay. You know, because I think the first two tours we did were Ted Nugent. First it was Ted Nugent, then Cheap Trick. And then we were back in clubs for a minute. And then we went out with AC/DC. And it all happened so fast. You know, everything happened so fast. And I remember we were back home for like a week, and then we flew out to Portland, Maine to start that tour with them. And we had just got off the plane and we were in the car and we got to the hotel and we got into our rooms and immediately we were asked to come down to the bar, you know, and it was like, you know, a crappy Holiday Inn or something, you know, it wasn't this amazing hotel or anything. But we were all staying there, and they wanted to meet us in the bar. We were the only people in the bar. It was the guys from AC/DC and us guys, you know. And they were just the most regular guys. And on that tour, Steve Young was playing rhythm guitar, and Simon was playing drums. And so, you know, go in there, meet those guys, you know, and Angus and Jake Berry, the tour manager, was there. I think Alan Rogan was there too, very sarcastic guitar tech. And we hung out for 20 minutes, you know, everybody just wanted to say hi and ask how we felt about it. And, you know, we were about to do our first arena tour. You know, I mean, that was our first arena gig was with AC/DC, you know. And I don't remember who told me, but, you know, it could have been Stuart Young. He said, you know, you guys are here because of Malcolm. And unfortunately, he can't be here. We're like, okay. You know, we didn't even dare ask, where's Malcolm? You know, you know. So, yeah. So, you know, the next night, you know, they insisted that we come down to sound check, you know, to have a band meeting with the band and the crew and everything like that. And I think they were playing like Honky Tonk Woman or something, you know, they're playing Stones tunes at sound check. And I was hanging out in Angus's guitar world with Alan Rogan. That was his tech. And we became friends really fast. You know, Alan Rogan and I, you know, you know, he thought I was this crazy kid and I wasn't, you know, and so we hit it up and I watched this crazy guitar tech, you know, for the next month, just do insane things. But I met officially really hung out with Angus that day. He came up to me. I'll never forget it. I think I was 21 or 22. I don't know. And Angus was 31, 32. And I remember thinking, wow, man, that guy's old. I wonder what I'm going to be like when I'm you know, 31 or 32, you know. And I remember he was wearing like a little plaid shirt and some corduroy pants and wallabies. And he was drinking coffee and smoking a cigarette on stage. He walked in and said, hey, Tracii, how you doing? You sleep all right, mate? Yeah. The most normal guys in the world, you know. And on that tour, Mick Cripps, the other guitar player in LA Guns, he got married in New York City, and Angus let Mick use his personal limousine for a week.
Oh, nice.
Travel and Angus's thing. So I mean, that's what it was like for us. You know, that's what it was like for us. And Brian was very, you know, we were surprised at like how he sang. Like, what did he do? And Phil, our singer, pointed out to me. He goes, he doesn't sing very loud. You know, his monitors are really loud, and because he was hanging out with Brian, you know, at that sound check. And Brian is like, you know, like really at that volume. You know, it's just the way he sings. And it kind of sums up Brian. Like, you know, Brian's kind of like a cartoon character, you know, always in a good mood, you know, how you doing? And then he skips out, you know, one of those guys like, hey, yeah, nice to see you. Don't want to see you. Kind of guy. And, you know, that was our first tour. And it was our first arena tour. But the next tour was an arena tour. Like, you know, I didn't know there was a difference. You know, I didn't know that there were these arenas and then there's these arenas. You know, so that was the first tour.
Was that with I mean, so you're talking as far as the next tour you guys did with them, because you were with them on Razor's Edge too, for a while, correct?
And that was a different story. You know, that was like you know, on the first tour, we were playing like 10,000, 12,000 seat. I think they're considered hockey arenas. I still don't know the difference, but they look big enough to me. You know, I mean, the first night I went on stage, I was like, holy shit, look at all these fucking people. And the greatest thing about that tour is we were a good match for AC/DC. Audience dug us. They bought our records, and we didn't have any issues. So that was really cool. So fast forward, I guess that was 1988. So fast forward to 90 or 91. I think it was 91. We get the call again, you know, like, hey, the guys really want to take you out. And Thunderstruck had already been out for like 2 or 3 months, and that was huge. And we were like, oh, cool, we're going to go do this again, you know. I don't remember where we started this tour, but I remember walking on that stage, you know, and it was like twice as big. I'm looking in the room, I'm like, how many people does this place hold? And Jake was like, oh yeah, this is a big boy arena, mate. Yeah, this one holds 22,000. That means you gotta keep looking. You gotta keep looking. You gotta keep there. And I was like, 22,000. So it's double the size of the arenas we had played on that last tour. And we had done big arenas in the middle, but it was with Def Leppard, and it was in the round. So that's a different perspective, anyways. But like to be at the back end of a huge arena like Madison Square Garden, for example, that's a big room, man. It's like it's so wide. And Malcolm was on the second tour with was it Chris Slade?
Yeah.
Nicest guy in the world. But Malcolm was there, and we knew Malcolm was the boss. We knew Malcolm was the boss. And he loved us, man. And he went out of his way to make sure, as he did on the first tour, we just didn't see him on the first tour. We never had a sound check limit. We used all their lights, all the PA, did whatever we wanted. And if any of us got out of line, they'd just say, hey, could you not get out of line? And we'd say, okay. And it was great. It was a great relationship. And that was just giant, man. that tour was so big. We were in the middle of that set. We all had assignments. Kelly, the bass player, he pulled the rope for the money to dump the money all over the crowd. I got to mix Hell Bells, Back in Black, and whatever else was on back. There's 3 songs right in the middle of the set, and the first day of pre-production before the first show, the sound guy goes, "Look, man, here I got to take a piss here every night. So here's Angus's fader, here's the snare, and here's the kick. You know, only hit Angus when the solo's coming, and if you can't hear it, push it up more." He goes, "If the kick gets lost, push it up a little bit. Once you can hear it, pull it back. Can't hear the snare." That was it. I had 2 Angus faders, a kick, and a snare fader. And I sat there for 11 minutes every night while the sound guy went and did whatever. I don't know what he did. And so, you know, they really try to include us. They're, you know, as far as rock stars go, they just don't have that persona, those guys. And, you know, Brian, sometimes you'd see him just, you know, walking through the crowd, doors are open, and you'd see Brian like walking to the side, just like, and everybody would go, everybody knew, you know, that Brian was coming in, you know, like, hey, Brian's going to come in through the crowd, you know. We'd watch him. Nobody even look at him, you know. He's just so like cool. And he'd get to that side gate, you know, and yank him over, and he'd be like, I did it again. You know. Characters, you know, those guys are just characters.
What can you say about too? I mean, because Thunderstruck as a song has become. I mean, it was that was one that was kind of right out of the gate, and it's obviously endured. I mean, that you hear that song all the time. You know, but what is it about that tune you think that just resonated so well with so many people?
You know, in like kind of this 80s, you know, popular metal saying, you know, we call it hook city, one hook after another. You don't write a verse, a pre-chorus, and a chorus. You write a very short verse, a chorus, and then a bigger chorus. That was what we always went for. That was the idea. And the thing that Thunderstruck has is it has one hook after another. That's the first thing. The next thing is whoa, 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 right? So you got a hook, then you got a hook, and then you got another hook coming. Thunder. Thunder. So they've already got you before the song even fucking starts. Who cares what the rest of the songs do? They already got you. They already won, you know? Hook city, man. Guitar riff, gang vocal, big gang vocal, verse comes in, then there's a pause, right? There's down. Thunderstruck, bam. That's like 5 hooks in a row, man. That is such a well-written pop song. You know, that song was designed to just suck everybody in. And for all I know, for all anybody knows, it wasn't planned that way, but they nailed it. You know, they just absolutely nailed that song. You know, this is, I remember because in between the tours, I was talking to my manager at some point, and he was telling me that AC/DC on the first tour we did, he goes, they used to be a lot bigger. And I'm like, what do you mean? Like, we sold out every night. He goes, yeah, but careers kind of go like this, and a couple of years before that, they're up here, then they're down here. He goes, but what's coming up next, you're going to see AC/DC, the big AC/DC. I had no idea what he was talking about. Then like a week later, I heard Thunderstruck on the radio. And it was great because they hadn't announced the song, but I heard, and I'm like, that's new AC/DC. And then all those things happened in a row. And I was like, oh my God. And I knew we were touring with them. I knew we were 2.5 months from then that we were leaving with them. It was fantastic.
Are there any other tunes or albums, from the Brian era that kind of stand out to you or that you find yourself revisiting?
Well, the last 2 records they've done, was it Black Ice, and then
they did Black Ice, then Rock or Bust, and then Power Up is the latest one.
Power Up and Black Ice, like, because I just have an AC/DC playlist, and I have songs from those 2 records, Back in Black, For Those About to Rock, and then like old Bon Scott live stuff, like that's the AC/DC stuff I listen to. And it's just the thing that I love about Brian defining himself in Back in Black is that you gauge everything. You compare everything to Back in Black. Everything that comes out after Back, you compare it. And they're like one of the only bands you can do that with. It's like with Zeppelin, every album's completely different. You know what I mean? Or Van Halen, it's like, oh, what are they going to do next time? With AC/DC, they're the only band that I hope they do exactly the same thing the next time they make a record. It's like, don't deviate from the formula. And they don't, so they're so hard to put your finger on. They're just, it's like, the only band you're going to laugh, the only band I can compare to AC/DC is Turbo Negro from Norway. They have that same writing sense, they have that same, it's always the 3 guitars, it's always the funny chorus, it's always, 150 beats per minute, it's like that. And, most people, the casual fan, they can listen to AC/DC for 4 hours. It's just like, it's like a drug, it's like, oh, right now I'm going to listen to AC/DC. For me, I'm good for about 45 minutes. I'm like, fuck, that was awesome, man. Now I got to put Elton John.
Yeah.
The way my brain's wired. But, the Brian stuff that's the best is when it's focused, it gets to the point, and it's rock and roll. You know what I mean? And thank God he never tries to get overly creative or insightful or, leave that to saps like LA Guns. AC/DC, they're just AC/DC, and they got a formula that works. And the respect that they garner, that they get from the public, that they get from their peers, the way they run their business. Most people don't know how they run their business, but their business is a family-run business, basically.
Right. Yeah.
Everybody's in-house. Maybe Angus does 1 or 2 interviews every time an album comes out. That's it, man. They go out, they have a good time, they play. Angus puts on the suit, puts on the 60 Les Paul or 61 Les Paul. And that's it, man. They win.
It's funny you had mentioned that Malcolm heard you guys and it's how you guys got the tour. I was talking with Dragon from Backyard Babies actually earlier today, and they got the tour for Stiff Upper Lip the same way. Brian heard a Backyard Babies album from a car mechanic in Sweden that was was playing it, and he's like, who is this? And next thing you know, they're taking them all across Europe. So they're good that way.
Yeah, That's the interesting thing is they're a rock band that wanted to take young rock bands.
Mm.
You know, I think King's X toured with AC/DC. I know Love Hate did.
Mm.
I know a lot of bands in Europe did, because when they toured Europe, they would have multiple bands. They play a lot of festivals, AC/DC, in Europe specifically. We never toured with them in Europe. I think a lot of, European bands got the opportunity to live the AC/DC tour for a while, which is, it's the best experience in the world, man.
Are there any other kind of funny or interesting stories as far as specifically to Brian that you can kind of share from your time on tour with those guys?
Honestly, I don't have a funny Brian story, but I have an amazing Malcolm and Angus story.
Okay.
So we were in Vancouver. We had done a show, and Malcolm and Angus wanted to take me and Mick to have drinks. There's a club there called Rock Candy. Mm. And I was going out with this girl, Ingela, from Vancouver, that a friend of Angus's knew. And so I was going to meet her there anyways. And so a lot of friends. We had a lot of friends in common. Anyways, the four of us just end up going, and we're just drinking beer, and we're in a corner. Not very many people there, maybe like 20 other people, but it was a rock club. And this guy comes over, this like wasted Canadian rocker, just like leather jacket with a jean vest over it, kind of looked like Malcolm, but tall. And he comes up and he looks at me and Mick, and who the fuck do you guys think you are? You know who you're hanging out with, man, and we're just like, what are you saying? Like, what? And little Malcolm gets up. He goes, who the fuck do you think you are, man? Get the fuck out of here. And it was kind of amazing, not because he stood up for us or anything like that, but the way this guy reacted. So Malcolm Young, just standing up like a high school kid, getting in his face, he was just like, and I swear to God, he goes, thank you. And he just walked away. I'll never forget it. That is that's the best story I have from any tour, from any bar fight, from any orgy, anything. There it is. It's little Mal, and it's just because he was a real guy, you know what I mean? Like he was hanging out with his friends, didn't want to be bothered, and he stood up for everybody. Mm-hmm. And Angus was right there next to him, just like, they're little guys, man. They're really little guys.
Yeah, I know they're. Yeah, I know the whole band's kind of. They're definitely smaller in stature, but.
I thought, I knew that Angus was little. You always heard that back in the day. Angus was a little guy. Like, oh, okay, cool. So when I see the videos, Cliff looked like a tall guy. You're like, oh yeah, Cliff, that's the big bass player, right? That first time I was telling you when we met him in the hotel, all these little guys came up, and I'm a little guy. I mean, I'm only 5'9", all these little guys. I think Cliff is like 5'6". I was shocked. Like, you're the giant bass player. Like, wow. Yeah. That's all my AC/DC stories, really. That's it.
Nice, man. Well, I'll ask you one more quick question here, Tracii, and then I'll let you go, man. Again, I appreciate your time. Do you think Brian gets enough credit for his role in AC/DC? We kind of talked about this at the start of the interview a little bit, or sort of alluded to it. There's always a lot of praise for Bon, and deservedly so, because Bon's a legend, and but even from AC/DC, like they put out a Bon Scott box set and stuff, and they're always kind of going back to stories about him. But do you think that Brian kind of gets lost in that a little bit?
I think it's perceived that he gets lost in it from people that are paying attention, like you and I. We pay attention, because we care, right? And looking back at Bon Scott you're looking back. It's like looking back at Jimi Hendrix. It's like looking back at Kurt Cobain at this point. something about when you die at the height of your career, you become immortal. You become immortalized in the minds of the fans of the time. I guarantee you that 8 months after Back in Black hit, that audience had increased from 2 million to 10 million. There were 8 million new people that were AC/DC fans. So to guys like you and I, yeah, the perception is, oh yeah, everybody still respects Bon and puts him on this thing. Well, he died. You know, he has this legacy, this whole thing. But there's no doubt in my mind that Brian Johnson's voice made that band what they are now. There's no question about it that Brian Johnson is the commercial success voice of AC/DC. He's the Mick Jagger of AC/DC. You know what I mean? He is the front man for AC/DC. And anybody that's my age or younger would agree with me. You know, like, yeah, we dig Bon Scott, you know, she's got big balls. We all got big balls and all that shit. It's fucking great. It's funny. It's cool. And Jailbreak and all that stuff. It's killer. But it's kind of like when Iron Maiden got Dickinson after having Di'Anno. You know? I'm a diehard Di'Anno fan, so I can understand people being a hardcore Bon Scott fan. I get it, you know. But Maiden would never have got as big without Dickinson. And the truth is, AC/DC wouldn't have been as big without Brian Johnson, you know. And you know, you can't argue with statistics. Statistically, AC/DC with Brian Johnson is a Goliath. It's mammoth. It's like the number one grossing box, you know, tickets any year they tour. They sell more tickets than Garth Brooks, man. I mean, you know, and the simple fact is they did not do that with Bon Scott. They did not. They did not sell in that quantity. So I mean, maybe there's two sets of fans. It's kind of like me with Maiden. You know, I prefer Di'Anno. I dig Dickinson. You know, people that grew up on Bon Scott, they dig Bon Scott, and they probably dig Brian Johnson too. But they're always going to give more credit to Bon Scott. You know, so. But you know, to answer the question in the short form is, I do think that Brian gets the credit, and I do think he's respected by the fans, and you know, especially after that weird debacle. You know, who knows what happened, and then Axl went out there and sang, who did an amazing job. You know,
right.
But I think that AC/DC fans are very respectful overall, and I think that they love the music and they show up and they respect the decision making of the band. Rolls on, man, to this day. It's amazing.